Hey everybody, how's it going? Mark here, and today we'll be talking about the smuggler skills tier list. So first skill that we're gonna be talking about is, I believe, let me see what it's called. It's called Black Powder Trap. Yeah, I think the skill is actually like pretty good. It's also like a good thing about a smuggler, but she has an active instead of a passive ability. So that means that Smuggler can get overall more passive abilities, which kind of in general are better. So I'm gonna put this, I would think about putting this between really good and good. Also, another like use case scenario is, for example, if you have ranged Smuggler, yeah, you can set up in a house and put this trap between doors so that the enemy, if he wants to approach your smuggler, he has to trigger the trap. Or you could also be like sneaky and put this smuggler trap on like corpses of the enemies and stuff so that it's really well hidden and then you can trigger it. So like a good thing about this is that whenever somebody like gets on this, they usually also lose all of their SP. So not only did you manage to like block that one person from entering the house, but you also blocked like multiple people, because now that house cannot be approached because there's somebody standing in the doorway. So it's also very, very good. This is also potentially very good for demon slaying, but you kind of just want to set up like a very smart scenario and it's not always easily achievable. It can be also argued that in an ambush sort of a scenario, this might be kind of hard to set up. And there are like ways to play around it. For example, you don't want to play around the house where the smuggler is and so on. Another like a use case scenario would be to put this sort of a trap, especially in like PvP scenarios. You would put this on your flag so that when your flag gets approached, the enemy doesn't get a chance to, the enemy basically loses all of the SP to actually grab the flag, and that's gonna like get you at least one turn of that. So I suppose I'm gonna actually put this into really good because I kind of persuaded myself. So let's put this like really good because it's a passive skill. I think it's a very good, really good passive skill for the smuggler. Okay, the next one, the next ability is called Impact Shot, I believe. So Impact Shot basically works in such way, the basic version and the mastery both cost 3 offensive points, but because the smuggler only has guns as weapons, effectively this makes your shots cost basically 4 offensive points instead. The basic version is just like a regular shot, but it has 20% armor penetration. And the mastery has instead 40% armor penetration. I'm not really sure how to rank this because I never really played this. I don't know if Smuggler has a possibility. They kind of do have a possibility to go for 15 toughness, which would allow them to go for an impact shot, and then use the Master Adrenaline Rush for one final shot, which would be just the regular shot. Also, like Smuggler can also achieve the, what do you call it, 20 ballistic skill, right? So yeah, I think it's kind of like usable. I'm pretty sure like overall the skill is very, very, very much unexplored. What I would personally would like to know is if this skill actually works with, what do you call it? I believe it's called a musket, but I might be wrong. No, it's called blunderbuss, because blunderbuss fires in a cone, right? So if you could, and like one of the weaknesses of blunderbuss is that it's just kind of pure damage. It doesn't have like anything added on top of it. And if you could enhance the blunderbuss shots with the armor penetration, that could be a very, very huge deal. You could also like hypothetically use this with a hunting rifle, and I believe hunting rifle also has some of the best base damage in the game for a gun. Might be wrong though, but I'm not entirely sure. Because I don't know how to exactly... I haven't played with the skill whatsoever, and I've never ever seen anybody pick this skill ever. I'm just gonna kind of like follow my gut here, and I guess I'm just gonna put it into not bad, like both of them. This might be... I'm feeling like this might be actually good, and this might be just actually not bad. This skill would be, I think, really, really good if, for example, Smuggler had access to, what do you call it? Some of the like bows or crossbows. I think that could be kind of legit, but then it wouldn't be the Smuggler, right? It wouldn't be that character. Yeah, but if it actually works with, what do you call it? With blunderbuss, I mean, that can be quite a bit of damage, right? And like, let's say you actually also combine it with Eagle Eyes, you would be dealing like pure damage. It would be something like 70 damage per hit, which would not be reduced by armor. So, can be a huge deal, I guess. Okay, let's get to the next skill. And I believe this skill is also getting reworked. It's called Liquid Courage. So Liquid Courage, basically, it costs 2 SP, and the basic version increases initiative by 10. The mastery version increases initiative by 20, and it also increases the chance to pass all alone tests by 10% for 2 turns, and the mastery by 20% for 2 turns, but the duration is increased to 3 turns. I think this just kind of ends up being a worse ready stance. Granted, you probably can stack it with ready stance already. I think overall also the Smuggler herself is already a bit of a high initiative character, so you don't necessarily want even more initiative on her, in my opinion. I believe it's gonna get reworked to also include like fear and terror resistances. But right now, as it is, think... Oh, let me see. Okay, there's one more thing which I didn't mention. Apparently the effect is stackable, so you can stack it, and that can be kind of a huge deal. In this case, this would be kind of like stackable ready stance. That's kind of interesting in a way. So for 4 SP you could increase your initiative by 40. You could maybe combine it with the blunderbuss, right? That's kind of interesting, but I think the skill is a bit of a trap, probably. I think it still is probably a bit of a trap. I think it is probably a bit of a trap. But I can see this being like used. Maybe I just cannot see like using enough SP for the stacking. I'm not sure entirely. I'm not sure entirely. I'm not sure entirely, so I'm just gonna put this into kind of bad, because I feel like it's probably a trap. Okay, next one that we have, it's the repose stance. So basically, repose stance is basically like a regular parry, but with the counter attack, like the basic version, the counterattack has plus 10% crit chance, and the mastery then increases the parry charges to 2, and crit chance goes back to the crit chance goes to 20% instead for the counterattacks. So I kind of want to like Riposte Stance, but okay, I feel like the basic version. The basic version is just kind of okay. It's basically a slightly better parry, which has a chance, a very minuscule chance to crit the enemy. So if you're going for a Riposte Stance, you're basically going for this build, right? And I don't know, maybe it's kind of like an interesting interaction, because I don't know if Nerf Shot actually disables Riposte Stance. And I would assume that probably not, because Nerf Shot specifically states that it disables Web of Steel, but it doesn't disable Riposte Stance. So that's also like a pretty good argument to actually go for a Riposte Stance. And that's kind of interesting, in my opinion. So Riposte Stance Mastery. Whoopsie daisy, I took the wrong thing. Let's put this here. Riposte Stance Mastery. I'm gonna put this into not bad. 20% crit chance is quite significant, and it's a Riposte Stance, so it's also going to stack with the sword. And the sword itself has plus 80% crit chance, so it kind of is like a nice thing going on for itself. The counter to this build, however, is if the enemy just decides to stop attacking you altogether, but then you also have like some kind of other counters to make the enemy attack you anyway, to force them to attack you. So overall, I think it's kind of not bad. Maybe kind of a shameful thing. I believe this doesn't work with counterblow, because counterblow only works if you manage to dodge. And yeah, this doesn't, I believe it just doesn't work with that. So yeah. Actually, the description is a bit incorrect in that the counter has plus crit regardless of whether the parry succeeds or not. Also to note, Riposte Stance can be used with any melee weapons, not just parrying ones. Okay. But I think if you're going for a Riposte Stance, you'd probably want to go for the swords anyway. But you could be also using it with axes, and that's kind of interesting. I feel like I'm getting into a bit of an undiscovered territory with Smuggler. I don't really play her as much as other characters. And the next one is Captain's Speech. The basic effect, what it should do, is basically everybody within 5 meters of you is going to get plus 20% additional resistances to All Alone, Fear, and Terror for 2 turns. And this one is gonna give plus 40%, but for 3 turns. So I'm not really sure if this also affects the Smuggler herself. If it does, then this could be potentially really good. But I'm talking about like this one. The problem, I believe, is that Smuggler is not exactly like a leader hero. She doesn't really like, how do you use the skill if it costs like 3 SP? It's a bit awkward. But if you do manage to like get it on like early, you have like 3 rounds of plus. I think a lot of it like depends if this skill also affects the Smuggler herself, or if it doesn't. Okay, I don't know. So let's just assume it doesn't work. Okay, in that case, I believe it should work also on the smuggler herself. For the same reasons that I talked about during the leadership skills, right? It's a bit dumb. So I think like the basic version is gonna be just too awkward of trying to apply it to the enemy, especially if it doesn't. Especially if it also doesn't, like, if it doesn't affect the smuggler herself. I think it's just kind of a trap because it costs too many SP. So yeah. And this one is, I believe this one is okay, but if it doesn't affect the smuggler herself, and it's also just kind of awkward. Cause like, what are you gonna do? Just like breathe down on your ally's neck during the combat? Like, that's not something that you're gonna be doing, to be honest. Did I put this into kinda bad? I believe I think I did. But I think Liquid Courage seems to be a little bit better than this skill. Okay, next skill. And the next skill is actually Hand Bomb, and I believe it also got nerfed. So let's talk about the skill. So basically, Hand Bomb is like a free offensive point skill. You basically just throw it on the ground. It has like 5 meters area, I believe. No, it has a 3 meters area. And it deals 15 to 20 damage. And this one deals 30 to 40 damage instead. Before it got nerfed, the mastery was doing like 20 to 30 damage, I believe, but it only cost 2 offensive points. Although like the damage numbers are overall higher for the progression of the smuggler, because smuggler only gets those 9 offensive points, she will be only able to throw this hand bomb twice until she gets level 10, right? And also in scenarios where whenever like enemy reduces your offensive points, let's say by 1, right? You're gonna be able to throw this hand bomb only twice. You're not gonna be able to throw it 8 times. Sorry, 8 times, 4 times. So yeah. But basic version is kind of like an interesting thought if it kind of makes sense. Like I could maybe see this being picked up on some of the melee smugglers for scenarios where, like, for example, like enemy has only like 1 health or something, and you just want to guarantee the kill. And like pinging in video games can be really powerful because you guarantee, like, this is like hand bomb is a guaranteed damage that pierces armor, and that's really powerful. So my gut is telling me that this might be like either good or not bad. And like there's also like the thing that this is an AoE damage, right? So it's like 15 to 20 damage, but if you throw it at like, let's say 2 people, that's gonna be 30 to 40 damage. That's quite a big more of a deal. And it arguably also kind of works with these sort of stances, like repose stance, right? Or like some incredibly defensive stances like sidestep, or like serenity tanks, right? If the enemy starts not wanting to attack you and is just waiting for you to attack first, so that they can counterattack, well, you have like suddenly like a thing to do with your hand bombs. And that's really powerful, like being able to actually be able to spend your offensive points and forcing the enemy to attack you anyway. I'm gonna put this one into I'm gonna put this into good. And this one might be potentially insane. Because you can actually make a smuggler like a full tank, right? And this is your only damaging ability. It's kind of like a spell that doesn't invoke Tzeentch's curse. It's kind of a big deal. Let's put it into insane, probably. Probably insane. I think the previous version would probably be the unnerfed version would probably be God tier, but I'm gonna put this one into insane. Okay, next one we have sniper shot. So there's no such thing as going like halfway through with your smuggler with the sniper shot. So let's just put this like a progression thing, and for progression, it's just kind of okay. Maybe kinda bad. I'm gonna put this into kinda bad. And like the mastery, I think the mastery is just really not bad at all. You can make smuggler builds, for example, with like the hunting rifle, which are able to crit enemy for something like 180 damage, right? And that's from 40 meters distance, which is arguably completely crazy. You play the game quite differently if you have like a sniper, a sniper smuggler that you're going up against. You can also like use it with the crit guns, but I'm not exactly a fan of them. Like, yeah, sure, they give you like crit chance. Hada quite likes them, to be honest, but I'm pretty sure the hunting rifle is the better way to go, just because you have that 40 meters range. And that's a really huge range, which might even like catch the enemy off guard. So if I say it like that, this might be actually just good instead. But the thing about like this sort of a crit, like the sniper smuggler build, is that you're again like playing a bit of a casino. But if you're playing a casino at a 40 meters range with a character which has a natural movement of 7, maybe you're more fine with it. At level 10, obviously, your smuggler is gonna have 9 offensive points, and sniper shot costs 5 offensive points if it's used with a gun. So you really just get 2 shots per round, and you should be able to hit them because it's a sniper shot, gives you plus 30% hit chance. And she is also like quite versatile at moving around and stuff. And there were also like other skills which kind of support it, so yeah, I think I'm fine with like the placement of not bad. It's really not bad. It can be insane. I would put this between like not bad and good. So let's put this into the top of not bad. Okay, the next one, Tactician. I've kind of talked about this already for Mercenaries. Basically, the effect is stackable, and you can make some pretty powerful combos with it. Yeah, so it basically goes to the same spot, because Smuggler can also do the strategy. The strategy that we do not speak of. Next one is like a stun bomb or something like that. No, it's a white powder trap. So it's a trap again, right? Basically, if somebody approaches you, and it basically, I believe, again, looks like a loot point. If somebody approaches it, they go through a stun check or something. Yeah, everybody within 5 meters goes through a stun check. and they might get stunned. I think this is... So, like, the basic version costs 4 offensive points, and the mastery also is easy to master, and the mastery just makes it so that you don't have to pay the tax of the 4 offensive points to set up the trap. So the basic version, I think it's just... I would say it's good. I think it's something that you want to do with your like sniper shot smuggler, or maybe like the impact shot smuggler. It's arguably like another black powder trap that the enemy has to go through to get to you. But the thing is, it also like kind of makes sense with crit smugglers, because if the enemy does get stunned, you gain plus 20% hit chance and plus 20% crit chance against stunned targets. So that's kind of a big deal. But I assume you're gonna be like using this because it just kind of makes sense to pick this skill up for you, or you're just picking up the skill because you have some empty slots in your skills. So I don't think it's... When I say it like that, I feel like it's more of a not bad skill, right? Because it's more of an optional thing. It's like, do you want this or do you not want this? So I think it's not bad, really. And you basically, you most of the time just use it outside of combat. As for the mastery, I would probably put this in... I'm gonna put this into kinda bad. Because you most of the time you just want to set up traps outside of combat, and what this skill is basically telling you that you are now allowed to set up traps during combat. So you can like shoot somebody with a sniper shot, adrenaline rush, shoot again, and then you can set up a trap as well, so that you're safe. When I say it like that, it kind of like makes the skill a little bit better. But I think this might be just kind of awkward to set up with your SB and like walking around and like reloading as well. You have to like also reload. It might be just kind of awkward. So I think this skill is more of a trap. Maybe I would use it if I have some leftover points, but you will probably find something better to use. And the last thing is Captain's Order, right? So Captain's Order, I think it's a little bit better, I would say. A little bit better than, what do you call it? Warcry, right? Because Warcry is just all allies around you, and you increase their melee damage by 15%, and the Mastery gives melee damage increase by 20%. So what Captain's Order does is that it has a range of 15 meters, and for 2 SP, you pick one of your guys, and you give them plus 15% damage for 2 rounds. And the Mastery increases the damage to 20% instead. I need to fix this a little bit. Okay. So I think the basic version is quite a bit better than the mastery. The mastery, I don't think it's bad actually at all, because like mastery just simply allows you to spread this around your warband quite a bit more than this one, and like to make it like more lasting overall. Also, like another thing to note, like the difference between Warcry and this is that this also increases the ranged damage, and this is one of the few instances where you're able to boost the damage of your archers. and that's quite significant, in my opinion. And also, like, if you are in combat with a smuggler, you usually want like at least 3 SP left over for stances. So what do you do? What do you do with the rest of your SP? Well, you can just use the captain's order. You can just buff up your units a little bit, the ones that you think are important to buff. And yeah, it's quite neat. And I would probably use this, honestly, this skill for a melee smuggler, but maybe I could see this also being used on a ranged smuggler that kind of like has like another sister smuggler and they just buff each other's damage and stuff. So this one, I think it's good. I think it's good. And this one is, I think it's, I think it's not bad. Well, maybe also like another thing to note is that this skill also stacks itself with Warcry, right? And it's like another instance of damage. And I believe like also like, I think 15% damage is quite underrated. So 15% damage is 5 more strength for a character. And that could be like 10 more damage for a melee hit. And that 10 more damage would be the difference between a character dying or staying alive, right? Yeah, yeah. Maybe I would even like put this also into good, but it might just be a little bit awkward trying to get this. I don't know. Maybe this is just good, to be honest. And let's now move to the passive skills. So let's start with boarding prowess, and I'm going to read the skill so that I don't mess it up. So basically, the skill increases the critical hit chance of charge, leap, and jump down attacks by 10%, and the mastery increases the critical hit chance by 20% instead. Okay, so like first of all, let's talk about like what even is like a leap attack and jump down attack. It basically triggers whenever, like, for example, if the enemy is like lower than you and you jump down, and by jumping down you like push the enemy a little bit, or like if you jump down and you become engaged with the enemy immediately, you get like a buff for the next attack. And yeah, that's kind of related to this. As a bonus you get like additional 10% crit chance, and it's kind of like the same thing with leap. Yeah, if you leap into a space with the enemy, you get plus 10% crit chance for the next attack. But very often what might happen is that instead, like, you might not be even able to jump down because there's just no space. So it's a bit of a weird thing. So I think this sort of a skill is mostly for charging. And the good thing about this skill is that you are able to stack it with Mighty Charge. And since you are able to stack it with Mighty Charge, you might end up with something like plus 40% crit chance. And if you manage to crit somebody during the charge, they might get stunned. And in that case, your disengage might also become free. That might become a huge deal. I need to like drink some water. Yeah, so I think just the biggest appeal is that you will have a lot of crit chance. So, but the way you charge is you charge with one-handed weapons. So you're gonna be able to put in like, with Adrenaline Rush, you'll be able to put in like 5 attacks, 5 charges, if the enemy gets stunned. But you could also guarantee a stun, maybe if you have like a headshot support unit or something. Yeah. So I think this one is also kind of usable. to be honest. Because like the requirement for this is just agility 3. So you don't even need to go for any agility whatsoever. So I think this ends up being really good. And this also ends up being really good. And I think both of them kind of make sense. It's just the question of if you want to invest into agility or not. And you also have just the option of not investing into agility. So yeah. But to be fair, I've never actually theory crafted what this sort of a charge build might even look like and what are the cuts for this sort of a build for a smuggler. So yeah. So let's talk about in and out. So basically, in and out, whenever you gather a word stone, your movement range increases by 1 meter and your initiative increases by 10 for 3 turns. And it's not stackable. Okay, and the mastery increases the movement range by 2 meters and initiative by 30 instead. Okay, I think about in and out. I think the basic version. I think it's just kind of okay because as a smuggler you already have 7 movement speed, so you arguably don't really need another additional movement speed. Maybe if you're playing some kind of a hit and run smuggler, maybe then I can see it. So maybe this more belongs into the not bad tier, and in that case your smuggler kind of becomes like a Skaven. Like we're talking about like a double sword crit build that could be used. So it might be actually not bad, but another reason why I would say it's not bad is because of the requirement, and it's just free alertness. So it's also gonna be like very, very cheap. And once you pick up the word stone, it lasts for 3 turns. So that's pretty good. I don't think like the initiative, to be honest, really matters. It might play a role like sometimes, but I would expect overall that it just doesn't matter. But the mastery version, I think the mastery version is kind of bad. Because like the mastery version, it just gives you like 1 additional movement speed. But the thing is, I think this one is just more about trying to two-turn people. But the thing is that I don't think it's like a reliable way of two-turning people by getting that additional plus 30 initiative, because you cannot control in the match where the word stone actually spawns. So it might spawn somewhere far, far, far away from you. So yeah. And in that case, you don't even get to use the skill. Or let's say you want to pick up the word stone already on your way as you're going to the enemy. Well, in that case, you kind of don't want to pick up the word stone just yet. You want to pick it up when you get the opportunity to turn somebody. So I think this skill is just really, really awkward overall, and I think it's just kind of a trap. And when I say it like that, that kind of makes me want to just put this into bed, to be honest. Because I think these skills are a little bit better. Like, I think this skill is probably gonna feel better for two-turning than this sort of a skill, in my opinion. I could see this also maybe being used like as sort of an alternative to Knowledge Mordheim for the cases where you don't want to invest into intelligence with your smuggler. I think this is a fair assessment, in my opinion. Okay, next skill that we have is probably one of my favorite skills on the smuggler, and it's called Walk the Topsail. So this skill increases the dodge chance and the chance to pass, climb, leap, and jump down tests by 15%. And this is like one of the best. This is one of the best dodge builds that Smuggler has. One of the best dodge builds, sorry. This is one of the best early dodge builds that you have in the game, because the requirement for the skill is only 3 to 9 agility, and that makes it like incredibly cheap to up your dodge chance to a high enough of a value where your dodging becomes consistent enough, and then like getting that expensive sidestep mastery, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. And then also like Smuggler, it just kind of makes sense for Smuggler to go for a dodge build, because she has a naturally high leadership. So you can easily combine it with Pendant and, for example, Nerves of Steel, because Smuggler also has like a 1 free passive slot, so you have also like 1 more space for the Nerves of Steel. And then you could also like combine it with, what do you call it? If you're going for 100% terror resistance, you can combine it with Serenity, because again, you have 15 leadership. So in that case, you're gonna be even over time. You're gonna less rely on your dodge. You're gonna rely more on your melee resistance, or it's like a sort of a thing which is just gonna work out well together really, really nicely. And here's the thing about, you can also combine it with Hand Bomb. And if you combine it with Hand Bomb, then you basically have a Serenity dodge tank which has an answer for enemy not attacking. You have an answer of just putting down hand bombs, and this is like one of the builds I would like to try to play. I'm gonna be probably playing it in the next tournament that Kitten organizes, so that is something I want to try. But like I was saying, like for Smuggler, this is one of the best dodge builds early on that you can do, because it is so incredibly cheap. And also, for one more reason, because Smuggler has actually access to flawless positioning. So that's also another skill that makes the dodge Smuggler possible to do early on. Because you get like plus 15% crit resistance from flawless positioning, you don't necessarily have to invest into more toughness. Instead, you can just keep investing into agility, and agility is going to give you even more dodge chance. So like everything about walk the top sail, flawless positioning, Smuggler just makes sense. Like leadership, I think that dodge Smuggler is a thing in my opinion, and I would like to play it. This one's good, and I would say this one is actually I'm gonna put both of them into really good, right? Because it's like a flash parry. Oh, and like also one more thing, right? Let's talk about like the additional effect, which is the increase to climb, leap, and jump down tests by 45%. So what you can also do is, if you happen to have like an injured Smuggler who lost her arm or who lost her legs, because your agility is so high, like a lost leg in Paramod like does not make you not possible to climb up any more certain heights. It is still possible for you to do, but you just do it at like a disadvantage, at a minus something. Yeah, and if you also lose your arm, that's also another minus. So you can also have like a Smuggler who lost her arm, who lost her leg, and that's plus 20% melee resistance and plus 20% range resistance. But for climbing up and so on, it's gonna be fine, because you have plus 45% chance to make up for it. So yeah. Combat expertise on a Smuggler. So let's talk about combat expertise. So yeah, when an enemy engages you, it gives you plus 5% armor and plus 5% melee resistance, the basic one, and the mastery gives you plus 10%. And I started thinking more about combat expertise as a thing, and like just 5% armor as a thing. And I think like 5% armor is a lot more important, especially if you have a low armor, than I thought. Because like, let's say you have like low armor. In this sort of a scenario, enemy just kind of wants to go after you and kill your character like really fast. But if you have like combat expertise, you're kind of like counteracting that by giving your character like more armor. And it also kind of stacks with serenity as well. I would say the skill is overall Honest Smuggler. I think it's usable, like even the basic version, but I don't know if it's bad. Like I could see this partially being used on the dodge builds, or like a melee resistance build with a smuggler. I think it could be a thing. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Like a hand bomb smuggler with combat expertise could be a thing. It would be better though if smuggler had access to shield enchantments, because then she would also be able to get plus 10% additional armor, maybe. I think I'm gonna just put both of them into OK, just because I'm not really sure how exactly to use this skill in what kind of builds, and even if this sort of a skill makes the cut or not. But I think the skill has some potential. So the next skill that we have, I believe it's called Expert Fencer. Yeah. Basically, your melee resistance and parry chance increases by 10% if you are wielding a dagger or sword. That's this one. That's the basic version. And the master gives you plus 20% if you're wielding like a sword or dagger. So like this sort of a skill can be obviously paired with riposte stance, right? You're like making some kind of a riposte stance build. But this can also be combined for a melee resistance smuggler with serenity. Basically, the idea is that if you're playing like a melee resistance dodge tank with serenity, you can use it to stack up even more melee resistance. And if you cut off her leg and arm, you know, it's gonna be like even more melee resistance. So I don't know. I think this one is actually like a little bit better. I mean, like just think about it. It's like plus 10% melee resistance, and this one is plus 20% melee resistance. Like, which characters have like plus 10% melee resistance and plus 20% melee resistance? And it also kind of makes sense from the standpoint that it gives you plus more initiative. So you might be able to find that enemy impressive on round 1 in like very dangerous scenarios, such as like ambush, for example, and just engage that enemy with your serenity tank. But it could be also used for like a riposte stance, and just getting more melee resistance is a kind of a huge deal, because enemy just might miss you, and then you're gonna have just more attacks for you're gonna have, if enemy misses your parry, you get one additional parry. You could arguably say that. So the basic version, I think the basic version is, I want to put this into good, But I think realistically it's more of a not bad skill because it's a choice if you want it or not. And I think this one is just kind of not bad. I'm putting this one into good because it can also be used for melee resistance smuggler. And I think this one is not really usable for melee resistance smuggler. I don't think I can find enough points to actually use that. But I think this mastery is used more for the riposte stance build. Yeah. So this one, flawless positioning, is god tier, because I already mentioned why in the Mercs video for Smuggler. This is obviously god tier because it gives her quite a bit of a... you're basically able to, early on, if you want to put your points into strength, toughness, or agility. I think it's god tier for a melee smuggler. It's gonna be a big help, and the requirement is quite easy for it as well. And this one, I don't think you necessarily need this one. It's 45% crit resistance, but how much do you care with Smuggler? I don't think you care enough because Smuggler has a hard time stacking armor overall. And you cannot really use it with combat expertise either unless you forego all of your leadership. Which is doable. But she doesn't even have an access to the shield for iron, stuff. So I think this one is... I think it's kind of bad. I think it's... like, I think it would be only relevant against, let's say, Demonette. And that makes it okay. So I understand why you would go for this skill. But I think you can just go for a luck rune and just try dodging. And I think it should be good enough, in my opinion. Okay, let's go next skills. And I believe this one's called Tight Crew. Yes. So it's kind of like the Skaven passive. Or Skaven passive. Yeah, it's kind of like a Skaven passive skill. So if another ally is engaged with the enemy, the basic version, the Smuggler gains plus 10% hit chance, plus 10% parry and dodge bypass, and the Master gives plus 30% hit chance, dodge, and parry bypass. So this skill got actually nerfed before it could even got used by anybody. It was just theory crafting, but like... well, before the nerf it was like plus 60% hit chance, plus 60% dodge piercing, and plus 60% parry piercing, which is quite crazy. But then it got like nerfed because it was like looked at. But yeah, basically if you're gonna be using this sort of a skill for a smuggler, I think it's definitely usable, but you're definitely gonna be using this on a daredevil build of a smuggler. I have no idea what this actually looks like. Thing is, tight crew costs agility, but that's fine. It costs only 6 to... or does it cost 6 to 12 agility? I believe it does. Yeah, it does cost 6 to 12 agility, but that's fine. It's totally still doable. Yeah, so it's not a problem. Yeah, you basically just play this with a daredevil build, and it should be good. And it should allow you to like kill people quite effectively. So that's a good thing. You can also just decide to go for just the basic version, but I think for the Daredevil build, I think you're better off getting the Mastery, because getting plus 30% hit chance is an amazingly consistent thing to actually hit enemies and kill them. Yeah, so this one is gonna go to I'm gonna put this into not bad, but let's put this at the top of the not bad. Maybe let's put these like so. Yeah, I like this a little bit more. And I think this one is really good. It's just a question of like, I'm a little bit surprised that we don't really see enough melee smugglers. Most of the people that I play against, or yeah, most of the people I play against, they usually just go for range smugglers. They don't really play melee smugglers. I think melee smugglers are quite severely underrated, in my opinion. Okay, so let's get to the next skill, and the next skill is, I believe it's called fine tuning. Yeah, it's fine tuning. Well, there's like an important thing to talk about regarding fine tuning. So fine tuning is ballistic skills, ballistic skills skill. Basically, if you're using a gunpowder weapon, which you are with a smuggler, your range critical hit chance is increased by 5%, and the mastery gets increased by 10% instead. But for this, you need 15 ballistic skill. Yeah, if you're playing like a crit build, it just kind of makes sense to put it in. The only awkward thing about this is that this actually costs that 15 ballistic skill. Yeah, because like the most awkward thing about crit smuggler is that if you want both deep wounds and this skill plus 10% crit range plus 10% crit chance with range. In that case, you also need to use Quick Recovery Mastery, because Quick Recovery Mastery gives you plus 5 martial attributes points. So it's quite awkward. I wonder if like this skill is maybe just good enough on its own without going for the mastery. But I think if you're playing like a sniper shot build, you probably should go for either of these. I think it's a little bit preferential. You don't necessarily need to go for the mastery as long as there is something significant enough. But for every crit chance build, the more crit chance you can get, the better it is. And that's very important. Because you want to crit as much as possible. And every lost crit chance is arguably a lost opportunity to actually crit the enemy and hopefully kill them. So I feel like just putting both of them into not bad just makes the most sense to me. The only thing basically what I dislike about the crit smuggler build with the guns is that she needs to go for the quick recovery in order for her to be able to get 15 ballistic skill and 15 accuracy. That's kind of what I don't like. Yeah, and if you don't get it, then I mean it's playable. Maybe it's playable. Maybe it's good enough anyway. Maybe let's put this to good. Okay, fuck it. No, I'll just leave it into not bad. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's a bad skill. I think it has a place for the crit smuggler. I think it has a place for the crit smuggler. So let's just move on. And the last skill that we have is survival instinct. And survival instinct is basically underdog plus, which can be stacked with underdog itself. Basically, when you're engaged by 2 enemies, you get plus 15% crit chance. When you're engaged by 2 enemies with the mastery, you gain plus 30% crit chance. And that's kind of a huge deal. I think it's more of a bigger deal Then Underdog, because Underdog only gives you plus 10% and plus 20%. I think this skill feels a lot more reasonable, and you can kind of stack it with Underdog. So I think this sort of a skill would be usable for the riposte stance build. Where is it? Here. I think it's usable. Because what is the weakness of the riposte stance build? The weakness of the riposte stance build is that you get engaged by several enemies at the same time, and you just don't have enough parries for them. But if you manage to crit an enemy and stun them immediately, then they are not able to attack you anymore. That's kind of a huge deal. So my gut is telling me, I don't know if I would actually use the skill or not for like this sort of a crit build, but I'm gonna put this into not bad and the mastery. I think the mastery feels okay to me. I think you'll have an easier time using like the basic version. I don't think it's exactly bad, I would say, but it's like, let's say it's like between not bad and okay, but this is like at the top of the okay. And yeah, I think that's it for my tier list.